It is this grand palace on the Raisina hill which has epitomized the strength, tradition and soul of a democratic nation. Each space here is a definition of finesse in architecture, grandeur in scale, and immense beauty in motifs. From the guard of honor to grand receptions hosting powerful and mighty, addressing a nation to overseeing the transfer of power, this vast building, steeped in history, has witnessed events shaping the destiny of a republic. It's not just simply a residence of India's head of the state. For last 72 years, Rashtrapati Bhavan has been the conscience keeper of the nation. December 1911, in the ceremonial reception at Delhi's Coronation Park, the announcement was made to move the seat of power of British India from Calcutta to New Delhi. The ancient city, surrounded by the declining Aravalis and rich watershed of Yamuna River, has been a seat of power of several kingdoms through the eras, from Tomars to Sultanate to the Mughals.
When the Darbar was being held, people did not know that this announcement would come. So it came as a very secret announcement, first of all. Now the whole idea of shifting the capital is got to do with a variety of reasons. One is that Calcutta, which had become the traditional seat of the imperial government, the British government, which was then manifesting, was in some way becoming a seat for popular struggle. A kind of a nationalist sentiment was building up in Calcutta, and the partition of Bengal only heightened the tensions, the nationalist tensions.
From 1857 or 1858, after the suppression of the Great Rebellion, the British had become much more conscious and aware of the importance and the enduring importance of Mughal imperial traditions, that these traditions still had a hold on the Indian imagination. And naturally, Delhi was the center of that tradition, because that's the place from which the imperial Mughals had ruled.
Soon, the groundwork began to level the rocky plains to the south of the Red Fort and the existing city, Shah Jahanabad, to carve out the modern capital, New Delhi. As the foundation of the new imperial city was then laid, there was also a deep thought on the design and layout of the grand residence of India's then head of the state, the Viceroy. The primary thought was how the building so central to the entire new capital should look like.
You cannot obviously build an British capital within Shahjahanabad because it's full of Mughal monuments, the fort is there, the Jama Masjid is there, but you can bring it proximate to Shahjahanabad. And that's why the decision is taken to build in Delhi and choose a spot that is just outside the walls of the cities of Delhi, and also a place that is somewhat of on an elevated ground.
There was this positive idea to choose a site which would reinforce the imperial position of British in India. And therefore, the idea, there was a territory, they were looking for a territory, and finally they are, narrowed down on the Raisina hill.
It was left to the imagination of architects, Sir Edwin Lutyens and Herbert Baker. The design and layout of great English county houses made Lutyens the obvious choice of the then Viceroy, Lord Hardinge, while Baker was well known for his designing of the government buildings in South Africa and other English colonies. Like all great cities of India, the New Delhi, which was to rival London and Paris, was designed on the flanks of the grand residential palace of its first citizen.
Both the architects who were involved, Lutyens and later Baker, none of them had any fascination for Indian architecture. They had, if I were to use the word, some kind of disdain for Indian architecture. And they were very, very motivated by a classical model, classical Greco-Roman model. So that is the model they had in mind. Now, what Raisina Hill did was to give them some kind of an Indian acropolis. So it served as some kind of an Indian acropolis to the Parthenon, which was the Viceroy's house.
Called as the Viceroy's house before independence, the name was changed to the Government House on August 15, 1947, and finally it began to be called as Rashtrapati Bhavan in 1950.
Every day is a memorable day in Rashtrapati Bhavan. Let me tell you, the most memorable day was when in 1950 the first President of India, Rajendra Prasad ji, occupied this. From then it was known as Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Viceroy Lord Irwin was the first head of British India to have lived in this mansion, while Lord Mountbatten was the last of the British Viceroys to occupy it. C. Rajgopalachari, first Governor General of independent India, lived here before the provision of presidency as the head of the state was adopted in our constitution. Identified as an ultimate symbol of the seat of power in imperial times, the first sign of the building's grandeur was its placement on a high gradient. Such has been a scale that those working here, even today, take time to get adapted to the spaces.
Every time I've been to Rashtrapati Bhavan, I've been wonderstruck by its beauty, by its architecture and its magnificence. And when I took over as Secretary to the President, we started appreciating the beauty of the building, understanding the beauty. But let me also confess that in the initial 3-4 months, we used to lose track in this building, lose our way in the building, because the rooms looked so magnificent, so great, that at times we used to take help to reach to our office or to reach to any other building.
Along the gradient, 2 secretariat buildings, now termed the North and the South Block, were built. Interestingly, the two secretariat buildings were originally drafted to be below the gradient in order to have a more grandly view of Rashtrapati Bhavan's courtyard, but Baker had his way in getting them at the same level.
The idea, he said, that it would express a kind of a unity between the Viceroy and his government. As a result of which, there had to be two changes in the plan. One is that it was pushed further away from the top of the hill. And two, the second very important part was that the slope to the Raisina hill had to be, very gentle, so as to, bring about a balance and harmony in the change architectural scheme, right? But when the gradient was being designed, and this was being designed by Baker, he allowed for a little too steep a gradient. That is where, Lutyens became very furious. He even said that I have met my Bakerloo. He used the word, I met my Bakerloo. And there was a lot of acrimonious exchange between these two by way of letters. So the friends who had become colleagues, parted on a very bitter note.
The majestic Parliament House, too, was originally meant to be inside the Rashtrapati Bhavan estate. After the adoption of Mountachet-Chelmsford reforms in 1919, it was decided to expand the strength of the representative body. This meant separate space for a bigger Parliament building. Rising from the foot of the grounded Raisina hill, the building with 340 rooms, 1.5 miles of corridors, 227 columns and 35 loggias under its roof was built using 4.5 million bricks, 1.5 million cubic feet stone, 7,500 tons of cement and 1,350 tons of iron and steel. It is in this H-shaped building, spread over an area of 5 acres, an idea of India comes alive. It took 17 years to be completed and emerged from the figurines of imagination and impeccable skills of hundreds of labourers and masons.
So the whole idea is to let you see. So the pillars, the iron gate is there, is to let you see. So you should see that. You should see the majesty and the imperial position of the British Empire, right? So one is the citadel, one is the high point of the Acropolis or the Raisina hill on which it is located. So it is at a height, So your eyes go up, when you look at that, And the second thing is the horizontal spread. You can see a spread of the whole, building when you see it from, nearby.
What they had were ruins. Okay, so the idea was we will build something that is alive, that will be used for the act of ruling, not just symbols. The Lal Killa is a symbol, but what we will build, people will see that this is from where we rule.
Entailing brilliant confluence of function, artistry and historical significance. The first site pulling in attention at the imperial structure is this circular obelisk, the Jaipur column. Standing 145 feet high before the forecourt, the sandstone tower was installed as a token of allegiance of Maharaja Madhur Singh, the head of princely estate of Jaipur, to the British crown. Designed by Edwin Lutyens, the sandstone tower has its top covered with 5-ton bronze lotus and a 6-side pointed star, which is made of glass. The star is simply referred to as the Star of India. It is the central dome which provides the most prominent sighting of the Rashtrapati Bhavan. With shades of historic Sanchi Stupa in its design, the dome rests 55 meters above the level of the forecourt, firm as its crown. Besides classical European style, the central dome also has elements of Indian architectural style, the theme reflected throughout Rashtrapati Bhavan in several of its motifs.
So the dome is often seen, Robert Byron says that, praise the dome, saying that, this is, about his individuality, saying that, it was much different than any other dome since the Pantheon in Rome. But what, generally most people, scholars feel is that, the whole idea of the Sanchi along with the railings is somewhere, put in there in when the tradition of domes comes into being. In addition to there are those 4 chhatris, surrounding the drum, which is there around the dome, around those 4 chhatris. And then you have the chhajjas, and then you have many sculptural motifs like the elephants on the front doors, in the front, the piers around the main gates. Then you have the bell motif, then you have lotus, besides paintings and other architectural traditions, So, they are using it, the Indian motifs very subtly along with this.
It was under this very central dome at Darbar Hall where the last Viceroy of British India, Lord Mountbatten, administered the oath of Prime Minister to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru on the midnight of August 15, 1947. C. Rajgopalachari also took oath at the Darbar Hall on June 21, 1948 and became the first Indian to reside at the Government House, as it was then called.
The main hall in this building is the Darbar Hall. It is a double dome like Taj Mahal. The Darbar Hall is the place where all major functions are held. So any swearing-in ceremony, the Union Cabinet, the expansion, any major ceremony is held in the Darbar Hall. Seats about 450 to 500 persons.
I, as the military secretary, will always look forward to an event in the Darbar Hall because Darbar Hall has a charm of its own, and the events there are also of national significance, and so one always looks forward to going to Darbar Hall and going through the paces of the ceremony.
Grand and simple, emulating symmetry par excellence. Darbar Hall is undoubtedly the most regal of the rooms inside Rashtrapati Bhavan. Known earlier as the throne room, if formalism has ever been bettered in Indian buildings, It's here at the Darbar Hall. The chair of the president is placed at an angle which is right at the line of sight through Rajpath to India Gate. Such formalism is often seen in Mughal architecture, like the one at the Red Fort with the seat of Emperor Diwan-e-Am, light on the same plane of sight traversing Nakar Khana, Chhatta Bazar, down the Chandni Chowk to Fatehpuri Masjid on the far end of the street.
Not that the scholars have written about it, basically in terms of seeing that, but I think there was a clear symbolism there as part as well, and this symbolism manifests in various forms, So while they're taking the, and they are, doing small modifications.
There is an attempt to marry, and Lutyens does it quite deliberately, I think, to marry Mughal styles of architecture with British imperial architecture, and something called the Anglo-Mughal, if you like, or the Anglo-Saracens, often it's referred to, that's the style of New Delhi.
The whole idea of arches is very much there, but as opposed to the pointed arches, they have rounded arches. Right? So they use those elements, but modify them to kind of suit a kind of a more imperial order, which is more associated with classical architecture.
With impeccable marble flooring and pillared corridors on the periphery, the chamber today hosts ceremonies conferring civil and military honors, swearing in of new governments, and even constitutional heads.
The most memorable day would be when the Union Cabinet is sworn in Darbar Hall. All Cabinet is sworn in Rashtrapati Bhavan. Of late it has been sworn in the forecourt also. And some other memorable days would be when the Vice President of India is sworn in. In addition, the constitutional authority like the Chief Justice of India, like the CAG, the Controller Auditor General of India is sworn in. But let me also tell you, the Rashtrapati Ji is not sworn in Rashtrapati Bhavan. The President of India, that is the Rashtrapati Ji, is sworn in the Central Hall of the Parliament.
These ceremonies may just appear to be an event, but today they are a mirror reflecting an institution connecting both the civil and military life inside Rashtrapati Bhavan. It's here the office of Military Secretary to the President comes into play. Existing since the Victorian days as Military Secretary to the Viceroys, the Bureau of this historic office is entrusted with the task of holding ornate and some even breathtaking ceremonies.
There are a number of ceremonies, but I'll just name a few of the major ones which are held either in front of the forecourt or within the Rashtrapati Bhavan. So in the forecourt is for the heads of state. Whenever we have the heads of state visiting, we have a reception ceremony there, a guard of honor, which is, I think, has its own splendor, especially because this is where the head of state is escorted by the president's bodyguard on the horseback right up to the steps of the forecourt, and thereafter a ceremony is given by the representatives of the three forces, that is Army, Air Force and Navy.
Normally for big ceremonies we hold a meeting. The people here are very responsive and they are very, very good. Normally a standard practice which I also learned when I joined here, we do a walk around. So if the function is, say, tomorrow, we do a walk around on a day prior to that. The entire staff is there. The walk around is of 20 minutes. So any doubt, any issue which is raised during the walk around is addressed at that time. As I had earlier mentioned, the staff is very, very professional. They love their job. They are very sincere. They see to it that nothing goes wrong.
Guarding the gateway of the main building, this forecourt stands a witness to several events and celebrations. These Tuscan pillars at the forecourt bears testimony of not just the enormity of structure, but also the symmetry and finesse. Influenced by the Tuscan order of architecture of the European Renaissance period, there are total 227 pillars in Rashtrapati Bhavan, with 20 in front veranda alone. The forecourt also bears symbols of Rashtrapati Bhavan's Indianization post the independence, like this Rampurva bull of Ashokan era. Like Rampurva bull, the Buddha statue inside Darbar Hall too is a grand testimony of decorating the building with more Indian motifs.
This Rampurva bull, which is a 3rd century, it is named because of the place of origin, which is Rampurva in Bihar. This pillar, and there's another Buddhist statue, which is 4th, 5th century Buddhist statue. Both these things have a very interesting part. They had been taken out as a part of an exhibition to Burlington House in London. And when they brought back, it was decided that they would be kept at Rashtrapati Bhavan for some time. So this is, I'm talking about 48. But then there was this big debate going on, and led by two very key figures, which is Jawaharlal Nehru and Rajendra Prasad. They both wanted these figures to be shown to the public as at a very conspicuous place, to be showcased as elements of Indian architecture.
Like any work of beautiful fiction, the architecture is also laced with folklore associated with the builder of this estate. These bells, called the Delhi Order, could be seen on every pillar. They have their own narrative.
There is a folklore which says that if the bells are ringing, then that may signify changes in rulers. But if the bells are silent, then there is a kind of a political stability. That's a folklore that goes behind it, basically. So the whole idea was, if the bells are silent, British rule will last for very long. But the irony was that, within 4 to 5 years of entry in Delhi, the rule was, started coming. The process was laid out by which the empire was trying to wind itself around.
Presiding over the ceremonies, it's here, in this 104 feet long space, the first citizen of India stands as a warm and affable host to the world leaders, wise women and men, and other guests. Legends and leaders from all over the world and many more have graced the grand room. which was once used by the Prime Minister to host the visiting dignitary.
Most of the people don't know. Anything cooked in Rashtrapati Bhavan is cooked here. We do not get anything from outside. So the entire thing, either the snacks or the food, is cooked in Rashtrapati Bhavan. One odd specialty, if it's of a particular country, may be taken from outside, but 99.9% things are cooked in this Bhavan only. As I had mentioned earlier, the staff is very experienced. So when one particular guest comes, we try to look at their choices, their eating habits, and the eating habits of that particular person, work out the menu and work on it.
The room, which can seat more than 100 people at a time, is also a marvelous repository of beautiful details in design and elements. Overlooking the Mughal gardens on one side, the banquet hall, also known as a state dining room, is decorated with Burmese teak panels on its walls and end-to-end carpets on the floor. The room's beauty is also accentuated with the intricate Zardozi panels, minutely crafted with gold and silver threads, and 4 tall chandeliers from its ceiling. Life-size paintings of former presidents adorns the wall of this historic room.
When 10 heads of ASEAN nations came, we did number of sampling. Sampling was done for the 7 days. One hotel was contacted which specialized in such food. Common features were taken from the menu, like they were all fond of papads. So variety of papads were brought in. Some items were taken from some countries plus a general menu. So that is how the challenge was met, and I believe and I understand that most of the people like the food.
Just before the banquet hall, a deeply ornate upper loggia overlooking Mughal garden connects it with the Ashok Hall. Studded with impeccable furniture and sofas, the larger-than-life portraits of the 3 former presidents, APJ Abdul Kalam, Pratibha Patil and Pranab Mukherjee, adorns the wall, as if they are talking to each other in admiration of the spaces. On the southwest part of the Rashtrapati Bhavan lies a rather intimate space for the visitors, the guest wing, which has accommodated head of states from across the world. Once called Irwin and Reading Suites, the grand space was used as private residency of the viceroys, and the suites have now been renamed as Dwarka and Nalanda, reserved for hosting the head of states and the delegation. When independent India's first Governor-General C. Rajgopalachari, fondly remembered as Rajaji, moved in, he found the suites too extravagant for his liking. Rajaji instead chose a modest space on the northwestern part of the grand mansion. The tradition has since been followed by all the presidents. The ornamental palace rooms are not just standalone. 35 loggias and grand stairways, known as Lutyens Grand Stairs, provides dimension to the life inside Rashtrapati Bhavan. From mundane to chaotic, these spaces are everyday witness to a usual day here. It's here, in one of the most ornately decorated rooms of Rashtrapati Bhavan, several ceremonies assuming importance for the nation are being held. Including the swearing-in ceremonies of new governments and the reception of visiting delegations before the state banquets.
While to a common eye it may look very simple, all functions here, they are very complex, and it's a teamwork, right from the conceptual stage to the execution stage. Each and every person who participates has a role in it. We go through all the past ceremonies that have taken place of similar nature, we study them, and thereafter we carry out a number of rehearsals. And every ceremony here has to be executed like a precision, and therefore we have no choice, no shortcuts, but to burn midnight oil and rehearse every part of the ceremony.
Breathtaking artwork on the ceilings and walls, the paintings tell stories of the past and the times lived by greats and the emperors of India. Forming the center of the Baroque painting on the ceiling, Fateh Ali Shah, the Khazar ruler of Iran, is depicted hunting with his 22 sons. Lady Willingdon had herself sent for the legendary Italian artist Tommaso Coronello to add to the design of the fresco work on the ceiling, and it took more than 1 year to paint alone the walls and ceilings of Ashok Hall.
Paintings on the ceiling, the paintings on the wall, and also the carpet. So these three elements are very important. The painting on the ceiling is one of Fath Ali Shah, basically the Khazar rulers of Persia, one of the Khazar rulers of Persia, and it is said that Fath Ali Shah himself gave it to one of the monarchs, and from there during Erwin's time it came to the Viceroy's house. Now, interesting part of it, it is said that Lady Willingdon, he was one wife of Lord Wellington, she did not like the idea of one painting on the ceiling. So what she did is she invited an Italian artist, T. Colonello, who along with 12 Indian artists added more to the hunting scene. So the Fath Ali Shah scene is a hunting scene where he is leading the hunting scene basically, right? And there to add it to that were 4 other hunting scenes by this Italian painter. So then it the whole idea was to complement that ceiling basically, it rather than having one hanging out that is normally attributed to Lady Willingdon.
Paintings of Persian poet Nizami Ganjui and that of a Persian lady lit by Belgian chandeliers are among the jewels of Ashok Hall in all its magnificence and beauty. The floors of Ashok Hall are often dressed with impeccably crafted Persian carpets. It is said it took 500 artisans and weavers 2 years to complete the carpet work of an undoubtedly the most beautiful room of Rashtrapati Bhavan. Among other spaces inside Rashtrapati Bhavan, the 2 drawing rooms and a long room draws an instant awe and admiration. Nestled in the corridor between Darbar Hall and Ashok Hall, North Drawing Room is used by the President to receive the visiting head of states before ceremonies in any of the two halls. Decorated with Burmese teak panels and exquisite wooden furniture designed by Lutyens himself, North Drawing Room along with South Drawing Room are the repositories of history too, with paintings giving a glimpse of times inside the grand mansion. The two drawing rooms are separated by the spectacular Long Drawing Room, which is often used by the President to hold meetings with a select group of gathering. Like other rooms and glorious halls of Rashtrapati Bhavan, the wooden and marble work inlaid adorns several portraits and paintings.
The North Drawing Room is used for meeting the heads of nation for bilaterals. So just before the banquet, the bilaterals are held in the North Drawing Room. If there is no banquet, then the bilaterals with the head of nations is held in the ground floor in the morning room. The Long Drawing Room was earlier used for the Governor's Conference and all important meetings. The South Drawing Room is used as a place where the spouses are wait when the meeting is going on, or is used as a waiting room when the meeting is going on in the North Drawing Room. So these are three important rooms which also attract a lot of tourists, a lot of queries from various people.
Amid the inescapable beauty of its three main rooms, Rashtrapati Bhavan's library revels in history and narrative. Carved with 8 arches, called the circle within a square, is also known as the daughter of Darbar Hall. The library holds a collection of 33,000 books, of which 2,000 are among the rare ones. But it's not just the history that has stacked Rashtrapati Bhavan of its riches. This mansion has also witnessed moments of moving ahead with the times. The once closed marvel has today opened its door for the common public, except the residential zone of the President and his family. The architectural wonder today is among the choicest of Delhi's landmarks for tourists and others. Previously, it was only a limited portion of the mansion, the Mughal garden, which were open for the public view in the setting of springs every year.
Normally, Mughal garden is a major attraction, and in the main season it is full of bloom. It has 3 portions, so walk in the Mughal garden. Normally it's an exclusive garden of the President of India, and normally the maintenance is of a very high standard. It has 3 portions, the main garden, then the circular garden and the long garden. That is one area which is very attractive.
They are bringing 2 different traditions of garden. One is the British tradition of garden, which is also combines element of a lawn or where you walk, right? And there is a Islamic tradition of a garden which is a resting place. So Mughal garden, in the case of Viceroy's Hall, brought together 2 distinct architectural traditions. One is the Mughal tradition about water bodies, wells, fountains, water bodies, pools, channels, terraces, and then also flowering shrubs. And on the other hand, this British tradition about lawns and also hedges and flower beds. So it brings together these 2 traditions spread over a big area.
Spread over 15 acres, the marvel of palace is also a perfect amalgam of Indian and Western style, in its design and layout. Inspired by Mughal gardens of Jammu and Kashmir and Mehtab Bagh of Taj Mahal, Sir Edwin Lutyens also drew cues from the medieval era paintings of India and Persia. While the design was finalized in the initial years of designing the Viceroy's house, the plantation at the Mughal gardens started in 1928 and completed after an year in 1929. The beauty of Mughal garden also came in deep praise by Sir Edwin Lutyens' wife, who called it a paradise. The flowers are also named after prominent individuals like Mother Teresa, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, Jawaharlal Nehru, Queen Elizabeth, Christian Dior, amongst others. Besides, Arjun and Bhim from epic Mahabharat also finds place. Another important gardens of Rashtrapati Bhavan is the central lawn. The square-shaped lawn is the main venue for the annual at-home ceremonies hosted by President every year on Republic Day and the Independence Day.
We call all the members of parliaments, all eminent people, all people who have excelled in life. A new feature was added in this, that all the eminent people who have gained something, all the toppers of various exams, the civil service exams, the medical exams, the NDA exams are invited in this ceremony. The procedure is, as soon as the result is out, a letter is sent to the candidate that we invite you for this ceremony, and the formal card follows. All the people who have got Padam Shri, Padam Bhushan, they are also invited in this ceremony.
Today, moving ahead with time, the grand structure has coalesced the glorious past with future-looking present. Through the great initiative, Smart Rashtrapati Bhavan aimed at modernization of the estate to make it model township for the employees at the President's house and their families. Each event is an inscription in the pages of memory. In this house, alive with past and present, where one usual day gives way to a monumental another.
This is one place where the civil and military work very cohesively, right from the concept stage to the planning and execution. The civil and military, we work together and ensure that every event comes up to the standards that is expected of us by the President of India.
As a proud, self-made republic, we could not have a queen or a king, we could not have a monarch, but we had the head of state whom we called the Rashtrapati or the President, and we ensconced that figure in the grandest possible building that the British Empire had made on the top of a hill.
Built with an outstanding efforts put in by thousands of labourers and ordinary men and women 90 years ago, the Rashtrapati Bhavan is an embodiment of everything that is a soul keeping alive the idea of India.
From being a seat of imperial power, which is symbolizing power dynamics, to becoming a seat of the President, who is the constitutional head of the state as well. So along with them comes, along with the position comes the values of democracy, constitution, republic, and the preamble. So that is in itself a very deeper symbolic meaning that it comes to, signify, by being like that.
He is the upholder of the Constitution of India. Anything that is mentioned in the Constitution of India, he is the upholder of that, which includes almost everything, the secular nature of the country, the rule of law, the various provisions mentioned in the preamble, as well as the Constitution of India. In addition to this, the oath also mentions that he will work and make sure that the people of India are greatly benefited.